saying.
Well, they were voting against him.
Yes, they were voting
Right,
against
but
him.
they weren't. They didn't have anything on their side that they could present
Yeah,
to
but
even
that's,
vote
I
for.
mean, that is the,
Actually,
that's,
as a matter of fact, they did. For example, gun control. Gun control would have passed the Senate if McConnell, by this time he was now majority leader, had allowed it to come to a vote. He tabled it immediately. Did not even allow it to go to committee.
Right. So what does that have to do with?
So there were Republicans who might have supported
But
various
it never
things.
got there to even say yes
Because
or no.
the leadership
The
said
leadership
no.
didn't bring it to the table.
If
Right.
Obama promoted it, it
We
must
didn't do
be
it.
bad.
it's no good.
Correct.
It's no good.
Trump's major accomplishments are to find anything that had Obama's name on it
And scratch it from the
and
record.
scratch it from the record.
Yep.
So
He's doing
they're
a pretty good.
consistent.
He's doing a pretty good.
Yeah, it's
pretty
amazing.
good job so far.
We now can have mercury in our water.
It's good.
We can have coal dust in our water.
What's
Why
there
not?
in your chest?
Something
Absolutely.
dark.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great idea. At least the
Actually,
industries
it puts
will
dust
thrive.
on your chest and your face
Yeah,
and,
well, that's what
and
I was
every
kind
other
of
part of
thinking
your
about.
body because
Yeah.
you're in a casket and it's dusty.
Yeah.
That's not a good way to start the program.
All right. The latest thing that we're trying to accomplish, supposedly, is to reform the tax code. Make it simpler. Cut taxes for middle class people. And
That's right there. Define middle class.
Yes.
I see some numbers there, and you. I think you read the same thing I read today
Yeah.
because there was actually a really good article on that. Good.
all right, well,
Define middle class.
okay. I have middle class as being a family income somewhere between $40,000 and maybe $100,000 a year. That's my own
Family
personal
of how many?
family income. Let's say
No, a
four.
family of two, a family of one, a family of
Family
four.
of four, let's say.
Okay.
But
I don't know. That's
families
my
are
personal
varying
thing.
sizes.
Yeah.
I
Right.
think it has much more to do with
That's
income.
that's where the tax code gets complicated.
where it gets very
although,
complicated.
Although we want, I like the words you said, make it simple. But as soon as you then introduce that the other word, now it becomes complicated.
What, middle
I'll
class?
tell you what. I'm going to make it really simple.
Okay.
Omanon, you pay everything.
Okay.
I pay nothing.
I think
You don't have to worry about forms. Anything you get, just send to the government.
Good idea.
I don't have to worry about forms. I can keep anything I have. Really simple.
yeah, actually
It
that
works.
is one of the arguments is some people are going to be able to just file a postcard and that will be it. So you will be one of those.
By the way,
people.
today, a lot of people file postcards. They don't have much money.
Well, that's because they are below the line.
Right.
Right, they're below the line.
What this program is looking to do is for rich people to be able to file postcards.
Yes.
That's not accurate.
You know, take a look at the
I did.
provisions.
It's not accurate.
Look at the provisions.
Because they want to make it simplified, and
make
I like that it's simple. It is at least theoretically, but then when you get into the complication of which kind of do you allow the exemptions, who are the people who can do the itemized deductions, and who can take the standard deduction, because the standard deduction is going to be double. And then
Child deductions,
child deductions,
401ks,
and can you then, well, the
HSAs,
major
FSAs,
item then
everything.
will be, can you deduct mortgage interest or not? Well, they are right now. They are saying probably you will, but I don't know.
Actually, the major thing is the increase in the standard deduction, which in theory makes life easier for the lower middle class. In fact, if you have a big family or you're supporting your parents or your grandparents or something like that, it costs you money. But the 401k, trying to get some money in today by saying that you guys are working, all you guys are working. Thank you for your service.
Yeah, I know.
You can, instead of being able to contribute, let's say $24,000 to your savings, tax
To a
free,
401k, yeah.
they're talking about making it $2,400,
I don't
which
know who
means that you
Yeah,
pay
no,
more.
that's again. That's
Well,
that's media. That's media who says
No,
they're
no,
just
no,
gonna.
actually, that was a
It says in
proposal
the
from
article,
the.
but-
No, I know in the article it says that.
Yeah,
but
but
again,
who came up with that?
Well,
number? I don't
originally it
Somebody
came
in
out
the
of the White
article.
House. Then Trump said, "No, we're not going to do that." Meanwhile, the Senate Republicans are trying to figure out how we're going to pay for this. And since the rich are going to be paying less, somebody's got to provide.
Everyone keeps saying the rich is going to be paying less, but we don't know what that means again.
Oh, I guarantee. I can tell you what
guarantee.
it
Well, we'll
means.
see. We'll see what happens.
There is the whole concept of alternative minimum tax was put in 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s.
A while ago.
A long time ago, because a lot of very wealthy people were paying no taxes whatsoever, because they could take advantage of deductions, which in some cases were put in specifically for them. So they said everybody's got to pay something.
Right.
So they put in this alternative minimum tax, which, by the way, is very complicated. You and I, possibly you, I don't know, but I never got close to the point where it mattered to me one way or another. And as incomes, in theory, go up, I say in theory because practically they're not, more people might get caught in that. But there's a real easy way to deal with it. You index it. At which point, the target audience has to pay some money, and everybody else works in the standard environment.
But the argument against that is that rich people, so-called rich people, let's say, hire tax preparers anyway, and they know how to pay at many times zero tax. So
Well,
it doesn't matter
but-
whether there's
but, again, it's-
alternate tax or no tax. It doesn't matter.
What was it? 15 years ago, somebody got a hold of Trump's taxes from 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, that was the big thing that was on
Yeah, and
CNN.
then
It was
Rachel-
a great whole thing, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden, oh look, he paid 38%. He paid 38%.
The reason
Imagine
he
that.
paid anything was the alternative minimum tax. Had he not had that,
But it's
he
but
would
it-
have paid nothing.
But it's a law at that time, so they were saying he didn't pay any taxes at all.
Well, no.
No, he
Or
said he doesn't.
He doesn't pay.
No, he said he pays taxes.
No, he doesn't.
No,
No,
no.
Well, he says, yeah, I pay real estate taxes on
No,
my
he
buildings.
says he says
He
all
does
he says all the
income
time
taxes
that he
as
pays
issue.
taxes.
But that's
He says it all the time.
But he also says that he uses the tax code to his
He uses it
advantage.
absolutely.
That's
Which,
what
by
I'm
the
saying.
way,
But that's why it's
That's
there.
right.
And, he said,
Absolutely
and that's what he's
understand.
saying about that he wants to change.
And he wants to change it to his advantage.
Well,
This
yeah,
alternative
he-
minimum
he
tax,
want- he
which
wants
cost
to
him
make-
$132 million on an income of, I don't know,
I mean,
a million or something
don't
like
you
that.
think you have to give him credit that he's in charge. At least he can change the rules to benefit himself. And if it benefits a few other people, why not?
In theory, he's not supposed to be saying, okay, I'm in charge, everything goes to me. He's supposed to be taking care of all of us.
Well, in theory,
All of us.
Well, in theory, that's
When have they ever taken care of all of us? Ever.
There have been attempts for
When?
many
Ever.
hundreds of years.
Nah, it's never been attempts at all of us. The word all doesn't happen,
Okay, you're right. There was
Not all of
always
us.
somebody who gets screwed no matter
no
what.
matter what.
Life is definitely unfair.
Correct.
But when you take care of me and mine, and everybody else
But
can
that
go
again,
punt,
but that's how anybody at that level does. That's what they do.
not
So
true.
now all you're saying is that they're taking care of me and mine.
So what
Until
you're
we
say-
see it, we don't know.
What you're saying is they're all scoundrels.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And that's what he said since day one.
Yeah.
Everybody but him.
No, he's not saying that.
Well, he didn't point the finger towards himself, though. But
No.
he did say
I-
everybody's.
Before he ran for, before when they still had 17 people on the podium for the debates, I said he's only in it for the money. He's only in it for the money, and nothing he has done has changed my mind.
But shouldn't you give him credit for at least he chased those 16 people away off of the stage, and he survived.
Every one of them was better than he was.
Yes, but that's not the point. The point is he succeeded. You have to give credit to him and the people who voted for him.
Yeah.
That's what
So therefore, whoever is the Don of the biggest New York mafia family should become president, because he's taking care of everybody
No,
else.
but
I don't follow.
the good thing is
He's taking care of
just
everybody
because
else
you
for
wiped
what?
out 17 other people
What,
Yes.
doesn't make you
but
But it's
good
funny
at-
how he wiped out 17 other people, and those 17 other people came to him after he got elected.
not all of them.
All of them.
all of them. Rand Paul.
Rand Paul. Now, actually, him and Rand Paul. He said the other day that buddies, because he's the one. He's either getting behind Rand or Rand's getting behind him on taxes and on some other.
By the way, Rand
topics.
Paul was one of the people who voted against going forward with this budget
Yep.
blueprint.
Watch what happens.
We'll see.
Rand Paul is given his strict libertarian attitude. You never know what is going to happen.
You know what? Right, because he's got more of an open mind than a lot of other people.
But at the same time, he also wants to limit a lot of things in government.
Right.
Which I like that, but at the same time, you have to make sure that you do not let the international. We're going away from the tax.
Yeah, well,
international powers. That's what is happening. You want to make sure that you have enough wherewithal to make sure that you maintain the international stature what the United States has.
Evidently, we don't believe that anymore.
What you got to do that, otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to get squished, which is not good.
No, you're not. Russia is going to take over Europe.
Yeah,
China's
that's
going
not
to
good.
take over Asia.
Yeah, that's
and
what's
we're going to
happening.
remain in power in at least North America
I doubt
because
that.
Brazil may take over South America.
Perfect.
Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
Um,
I'm good with it.
And Canada goes with the Eskimos, and that's the end of
well,
that.
no,
Canada stays by themselves. They're above they're above the line.
becomes like
They're
Puerto
good.
Rico, a non-state.
Okay.
They're doing well. They're doing okay.
All right, I don't know how much people have talked about what is actually was proposed, and as you pointed out, nothing has happened yet.
Correct.
And we'll find out when it happens after they vote on it. Not before, because God forbid you should have any say in how much you're going to pay in taxes. But that's okay.
So are they going to ask me how much I want to pay in taxes before they vote?
They may ask you whether, in fact, you think that this is reasonable given what you think you're going to get in terms of services.
Considering who? The middle class?
I was this
Oh,
weekend.
did we ever decide who the middle class was yet?
Oh no, you guys were going to quote. I gave you.
Did you,
a
did you have
number.
that same
Well,
that same thing?
this is I mean, you have to really make sure of middle class. You see, I mean, this is a tax bracket, 28
That's
to 39.
right, tax bracket,
yeah,
but the
25 to
definition of
28.
people have different.
37,500 to 112,500
So-
single.
Right.
Well, single,
75,000 to 225,000 married filing jointly. But that doesn't give
Okay,
you how
but,
many
but
children.
that doesn't tell me middle class.
No,
Right,
this
but-
is just a definition.
Because if middle class is 75K family income, then there is a very, very tiny middle class in this country.
But that's the single. Single
Single.
goes from 37 to
Okay,
112.
so we got to make 200,000 a year to be middle class?
Yes, married filing jointly.
No, you
No,
can't make
that's
more
the
than.
tax bracket. That's not
That's
middle
a tax
class.
bracket. But that's why people are trying to associate tax brackets with income with middle class. And it was I was reading a good article today. Depending on where you live, right?
Yes, the way
Depending
that's
on where
another-
you live and what
had
you
to
make
find
in that geographic location designates your middle class. So if you are, let's say you're in the Northeast, right? More benefits. Its cost of living is higher. So for you to be middle class, you have to make more in the Northeast. So I think they were categorizing Northeast was like between 110 to 175,000. That's the middle class. The middle class in like
Arizona?
Arizona can't somewhere where the demographics doesn't make as much and the cost of living is less. Middle class is between like 60 and 90. That's middle class. So depending on where you are, and the numbers are, I'm off a little bit, but it was in those type of ranges. And that's how people were thinking about middle class depending on the geographical location.
Burlington is
But-
a middle class community. Are we in reasonable agreement on that? As a general community, most of the people would be more or
Well,
less middle
it's-
class.
Yeah, I mean, we are middle class. If you
Okay.
compare
I think
us
it's tough
to
to-
I
the West.
question how many
it's tough to
people
do
in
that.
Burlington have a family income of 200,000.
No, I didn't say 200,000. I was way below 200,000.
No,
it
in
goes-
the Northeast.
In the
The
Northeast.
last time I looked at the map, Massachusetts is the Northeast.
No, I know, but I didn't say 200,000.
Yeah,
I was
you did.
no. That's the tax bracket.
That's the tax
I was
bracket.
saying between like 110 and 175
Okay.
in that range.
Okay.
Right, so you're in that range, and 175 might be 150 depending on, I forget how I read it, but that's how they were saying the middle classes, and depending on if you had 2 children, 1 child, 3, and if you were
That would
single,
change, that would
like
change.
things were changing. But around here, it's tough to say that because when you say middle class, you're almost in that range. You're in that range from like 90 to 150, give or take.
I wonder how
from a
many
middle class.
people in Burlington have a family income of 90,000.
I think a lot more than you think.
Really?
Absolutely.
I don't know the demographics actually go like that, but
It's-
probably it is out there somewhere.
I'm sure.
I think it's important to figure out what they're talking about as a middle class. You know, if you look at the bell curve of income, is the middle class 75% of the population? Is the middle class 90% of the population?
That was-
is the
that
middle,
was- yeah,
is the
that was-
middle class 10% of the population? You know, I mean, when you're putting it in terms of money values, you really ought to have an idea of how many are in the lower extreme and how many are in the upper extreme. I think the number in the upper extreme is very small, and the number in the lower extreme is huge.
Well, I don't know if it's huge, but again, that's definition. But I would, personal, Robert Creek, I think that the upper class would be at maybe 10% of the population or less. The middle class, about 60, and the lower class, economic class, what's left over, let's
30.
say 30%. And that includes a lot of retirees who...
Well, and that's not even included here. It's working. It's
No,
it's
but
working
you're
class.
looking at tax brackets.
No. I wasn't
but
looking
you're
at
not
tax
asking
brackets.
that
I was saying
question.
middle class as a working class, not as a tax bracket. This is categorized as a tax bracket.
Yeah.
The thing what I was looking at and what people are almost focusing on is your income class, not the tax bracket. So when I hear middle class, everyone has a different
Yes.
definition of what that range is. And until
Yeah.
you can get that range, it's tough to say that
I
you're
agree
going
with
to
you.
tax that range at this much. Or we're going to give the middle class a bigger tax break than the upper or lower class because we need to give them more money because they're the working class. But where's that range?
The middle class is a very simple definition. It's the class that I'm in. And everyone
way,
has
that's-
everyone has the same. You know, I'm certainly not in the upper class, and I'm not in the lower class, and that range is between 400,000 and 40,000. Anybody in that range between 40 and 400.
40
is-
and 400.
400.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
40 and 400, because 400
that
is the top 10%,
But they are
I
all
mean,
in
above
middle class?
400?
huh?
400,000 is middle class?
Above 400 is
Above.
above 400 is 10%. 10% of the population.
See, that number is not even talked about. It's less than, every time I've heard middle class, it's less than 100 grand.
Yeah, right. And the thing
So
is,
like and that's where it hits us. Like this,
mean-
the number from 100 to 400 is not even talked about.
Yeah, because that's what I mean. The number they are talking about, married filing jointly, is 75 to 225,000. That's it.
Right, that's at the tax bracket level.
that-
is that the net income or is that the gross
Now
income?
you
It'll
are
probably be
asking a
gross.
Probably
complicated
gross.
question.
It'll probably be gross.
Now,
Before
about-
or after deductions?
About 225,000 is going to be hit with a higher tax bracket, which is 35%. 35%. New
Right.
tax plan is 35%.
Well, the new tax plan.
Yeah, 35%.
But the current tax plan
Current
is
is
here.
28 to 39
Correct. So
That's
between
slight.
112 and 225 is 39%
right now.
right now.
So we are going to, that means those people are going to go into 35% bracket.
And this other spot is 15%.
Other spot is
Right.
25%, going to be 25%.
Oh, 25%, between 37 and 112.
37 and 112.
Married, or
75
75 to 225, married jointly.
What is also interesting about your,
So is it, where are you getting that from?
this is from, by an article written by Kimberly Amadeo in
Fox News?
In Politico. I read all of those in either Politico or Money or one of the
Okay.
magazines.
So this is what they're proposing?
That's what they're proposing.
That's where they're saying it?
That's what they're proposing.
Okay.
But what was interesting here is that what you talked about the alternate income tax.
Right, alternate minimum tax.
Alternate minimum tax. What this person talks about is the framework eliminates the alternate minimum tax.
Right.
That helps those who make enough to be subject to it. In 2017, the AMT could affect those with incomes above 54,000 single or 84,500 married filing jointly.
Okay. By the way,
Interesting. I didn't know
I-
this.
I've been doing taxes
Never-
either for
this has
myself
never-
or
this
other
has never
people,
happened.
and I haven't run across anybody who was subject to it. But if you don't index these numbers, then you start screwing people who you would ordinarily not want to screw. So eliminating the AMT helps Donald Trump.
No, not
If-
if not if you put the
But if you put-
35% over a certain amount. That's what we're talking. That's what we're saying.
He's going to eliminate that and then have the
And then have a
35.
standard number over a certain amount.
Well,
so
okay.
AMT gets eliminated, but anybody above this threshold pays 35%.
Number
No.
no,
Yeah,
it
that's
doesn't.
what
No.
it's saying.
Because after deductions and all the other stuff.
But that's
Okay.
at the tax. What you're
What?
talking about was when you're doing your tax returns, right?
Hmm.
Before your tax returns,
Yeah.
if I have a salary,
Yeah,
right? What am I getting taxed at for my salary?
at your gross.
No, what percentage am I getting taxed at? Now. Now, what am I getting taxed at?
Obviously, it depends on what your salary is. It could be as high as 35%. It could be as low as 12%. By the way, today 10%. But can I make one point? I'm going to simplify the tax code by reducing the number of brackets. That, in and of itself, that's unfair, because the more brackets you have, the closer it is to what your real income is, and you're not getting away with murder because somebody else making a hell of a lot less is paying your amount, or the other way, getting screwed. Because, and everybody said, well, look at how complicated it is to figure it out. When I was doing taxes manually, I would come up with a gross number, and I'd go to a table.
Yeah.
And the table would say, this number,
Between this and that number, yes.
this is how many dollars you
Yeah.
owe.
Yes.
And I don't care how they got there. You could figure it out if you wanted to spend a couple of weeks doing the numbers, but it's all right there. It would be exactly the same if we had 100 tax brackets or one or two. One,
Well, politically, it is expedient to say that we'll simplify it.
right,
At
but that's not
individual-
simplifying
yes,
it.
At individual level,
Yeah.
it screws up everybody else because you are in a wider bracket.
Right.
That's why actually, this Republicans are saying that instead of having one bracket 35%, we should have another one which is 39.6%
Above that.
above a million.
Right.
So that's another
Okay.
bracket.
Yeah,
Right.
but multiple brackets, as long as you have at least two, it doesn't make any difference. So my point being that that it's a con game. They're putting up a dumb little target and say that's the problem. When you do your taxes, see how complicated it is. Well, it's not all that complicated.
It's not that complicated at all.
Right. Particularly if you do it on the computer. But even when you're doing it manually,
How else would
it's
you do
not
it now?
Huh?
How else would you do it now? I mean,
Not
it's-
everybody has a computer. But
By using a pencil.
yeah,
You can't
but
use a pencil.
doing it with a pencil, it's not. Once you understand the deductions and some of these things, I can understand. You could simplify things.
Well, the whole pitch for the tax simplification was that so that the companies or the corporations would not be burdened with extra taxes. That
Yes.
was, I think,
That's
that
what-
was,
yeah, that's
that
one of
was the
them.
political pitch, so that we will be able to tax them lighter and give them a free ride so they can bring the money back, and then we'll all be good.
Amnesty.
Yeah.
Yes, we finally got amnesty.
But that happens now.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
they
that
don't
happens
pay
now.
taxes
No,
now.
but that-
Well, they pay taxes, but that happens now when you want, like, think about what's going on now with Amazon trying to get
Yeah.
to a new corporate headquarters.
Yes.
I bet you, what did every single bid do to get them to come into to come
They
into their
gave them a
town?
tax
They are
break
trying
on the
to
real
give
them a tax
estate.
break.
They're trying
What
to
has
do that.
Burlington done for almost every company that's come in to
Gave them a
to-
tax break.
Gave them a tax break. Why? Because they get the people here, they get people in to spend money in the
Yes.
community, and then over time, that they're going to get that money back. But it's not going to be in a tax, but they're going to get the money back.
Well, it will be
That's-
in a tax.
Well,
I mean,
not in a formal tax, but it will be in some
The
some
restaurant's
sort of.
going to pay a tax. on the money that
that people spend. So
Right.
somewhere along that line, and you have people who now live here, right? So you get that back. That's why when you look at stuff like this, they try to make it easier for companies to do business. That's one of the main reasons, because they do it anyways. It happens state by state, locale by locale.
But
one,
wait a
one-
minute.
No, but just one point I just wanted to make. What I don't understand is when the tax bracket was 90% or 70% on corporations, how come United States was on top at that time? For the
Because
that's what I don't understand.
They're on top when?
in the 1950s, when
well,
the top
it-
tax
no.
tax rate
I
was
know, but where else could you do anything in the 1950s?
England, France,
How could it, but you
Germany.
couldn't get it here? You couldn't.
Huh?
It wasn't as easy as getting things here now with cheaper labor outside of the country.
But even during Reagan's time, the tax
General
bracket was
Motors-
70%. But
Right.
even then, United States was on top. So
There
that's
was
what-
because everybody else was poor in a sense. It was different. It was a different time. I mean,
yeah.
just like mortgage rates, or just
Yes.
like at that time were 18, 19, 20%,
Yes,
right?
they were.
And everyone was happy to get a 19%
yes,
mortgage
everybody
rate.
was happy. Yeah, I know.
Now, it's that at that time you were okay, or I'm not saying you're okay with it. That was what was there.
But
And as you have more competition going along the line, you have to look around and say, you know what, in order for me to survive, because there's another company over here that can get me the product quicker now, I have to compete with them. So something has to happen over here.
But at the same time, how come the corporations are able to make so much money and leave it outside offshore? And that's
Right,
That's
Well,
what
the
I-
that
tax
shouldn't
code
happen.
says
I don't
if you do
understand
it
that either.
offshore and you pay your taxes in the country where you earn the money, and you bring it back here, you can deduct what you've already paid in taxes, but you still have to pay some. If you leave it offshore, you can use that money in a variety of ways, including lending it to
somebody else.
to somebody local, and doing whatever you
So
want.
shouldn't that be fixed?
Yeah.
Yeah. And didn't Trump talk about that with all these corporations that are sending the labor and stuff offshore
Yeah,
to
he
bring the
wants to-
products back? And he
Reagan
wants to double
did.
tax 'em?
Reagan
Just
did
take
that.
money
It
back.
didn't
Anything
help.
you want.
No, he wants
Yeah.
he
I'm
wants
sorry.
he wants
Without
he
a
wants
tax,
to tax.
without a tax break.
No, he wants to tax the
No, he
products
doesn't
coming
want
back,
to
and he wants
tax
to
it.
tax the
He wants
companies.
them to be able to get all the money back and not have to pay any
Who
taxes
get all
on
the money back?
The corporation.
No, that's not right.
That's what
no,
he
that's
says.
what
not
he's
exactly
saying.
It's not what he
Listen to
said
what
at
he
all.
says.
What about the Bombardier deal with Delta? What about that? Right, Delta
I have
got
no idea.
Delta got all these jets very, very cheap from a French company.
Yeah.
Right? What Trump said and what he's trying to pass through is, okay, Delta, you did that. I'm taxing you now 270% on those planes because you outbid Boeing, or Bombardier undercut Boeing because they were a foreign company, and they pretty much gave them the planes for free to get them here, and Delta should have got the bid from Boeing, and they didn't. So what he said is, you know what?
Did Boeing make a bid?
Yeah, they absolutely,
Oh, okay.
absolutely made a bid.
So,
what he's saying is
in
that
other words-
because the way you guys undercut them, and there was a different for wherever the money was, now when those planes come into this country, we're taxing them 270% above what you're paying now to get the money back. So
A, it isn't going to happen, and B, it's
however it's going to
Has that
happen,
legislation passed?
I have no idea.
Of course not.
I have no idea.
Of course not.
I have no idea.
He'll say anything.
But you're saying the opposite of what he's saying. I'm saying what he did say, and I've heard the same thing when
He says
when he's out.
everything, for crying out loud.
All right, so let him say everything.
let's
But you
wait a
only
minute,
talk
time out.
the negative part of what he says, not the positive side of what he says.
I'm
I'm
trying
saying
to-
both sides.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back to the point we had before. Corporations have money. They have gobs of money, low interest, and they're still not spending it. Giving them more money isn't going to change that situation. It's just going to give them more money, and they'll, they're not going to hire people because right now people don't have enough money to buy things to help the economy. So therefore, they'll just simply give it out as bonuses
but
bonuses
to
to
support what you said,
to
Trump
the senior
made
tax.
made a statement to some campaign rally he was speaking to. He said, if we bring back all this money and we reduce the corporate tax rate, it will mean $4,000 to every working family, because that money will be when the corporations get their money, they will give that money to their employees in increased wages, which, if it wasn't factual that people cheered that, would be laughable.
Okay.
Okay, when Reagan did an amnesty back in the 80s, it made no difference. It did not affect the economy at all. If they bring back even more money, the only people who will gain, other than the executives of the companies, are the shareholders. And the majority of people, the majority of middle class people,
increased dividends. Yeah.
yeah, but the majority of middle class people, whatever it is we're going to define as today, don't have a lot of money invested in the markets, etc.
Well, again, all depends how you categorize middle class.
But,
Well,
but,
yeah.
but in the long run, when you look at this, do the middle class really? Well, I shouldn't say do they really matter, but actually, in actuality,
It's
do they?
it's
really?
60% of
Yes,
the
but-
population. Does
but-
60% of the population matter?
No, that's
Damn it.
Yeah, they do.
Absolutely.
I mean, we do matter, but what I'm
Absolutely.
saying, but in the eyes of the administration group, whoever that is, does that 60% population matter, or do they think that they can make decisions which are quote unquote beneficial to the 60% population? Whether it is or not, that's beside the point. That's what you're saying.
Well, in part, I'm also saying that what they claim to be doing is ipso facto ridiculous.
Because we as voters can't. When we are listening to our politicians, we are there to clap. We can't immediately understand all the complications you are bringing up. That means
Well, every 2 and 4
Yeah.
years we can, because we replace the
that
person
takes
who's
a
there.
lot.
But
yeah,
that's only
that's
if
about 4 years
if
back.
you get
Well, now it's
reasonable
only 3 years away
facts.
now.
If you get reasonable facts, then
Reasonable
you-
facts for what?
on what the issues are. If I tell you, if these corporations, Apple brings home $500 billion or whatever the hell they've got out there, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
If they bring that money home, you're going to get $4,000. And
But why are you I don't understand why you're hopping on that. What is that?
because
Because
it-
making a statement like that is
Yeah.
Okay.
absolutely ridiculous.
Fine,
because
making a statement that has nothing to do with the tax code. It's nothing.
but that's part of
Everybody
the
makes
tax
stupid
code.
statements. So why are we hopping on bringing home $1 trillion from Apple and I get $4,000? That's
Because that's how it's being sold.
Yeah.
how what's being sold.
The tax, the
No, it's
the
not how the tax
reform.
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
sold.
it is.
Yeah, it is.
No, it
Yeah,
isn't.
it is.
It isn't.
I know
This
you
is
don't
how
want to
it's being-
listen to Trump.
this is
I don't
how-
want to
this is
listen
how
to
it's
him
being-
either,
how
but
it's
that's
being
what he's
sold.
saying.
No, but,
No,
but
it's one comment out of a bigger picture of what they're trying to do.
we have to
What
go-
are they trying to do?
This is what they're trying to do right there.
Okay.
Three brackets.
3 brackets. That's what they're
Okay.
trying to do.
Tell
all
me
right?
in your own words what they're trying to do.
They're trying to simplify that tax bracket for people who make this amount of money, this amount of money, and this amount of money.
But why do we have to simplify it for people? The
do you
whole
mean?
thing is all about corporations.
It's
and-
both. It's
and the
people and
upper one.
corporations. And it's for middle class, whatever that is, and for lower class, and for upper class, and whatever that is.
Why do we have to simplify the tax code?
Well,
What do you mean, why do we have to?
The selling point again
Why
is
do we have to simplify the
selling
tax
point
code?
again is
Because just how he said when he was elected, there's many loops, there's many tax loops in there for people to get away with things, and they want to close the loopholes, and they want to simplify things, and increase things, and lower things. Until we see it, we don't know what it's going to be.
Okay.
Right?
Explain
have
to
a
me
good
how
idea.
eliminating
We don't
the
have a good
estate
idea.
tax
Absolutely.
They're not
benefits
eliminating the state tax.
the estate tax. They're not eliminating.
no.
Estate.
Estate.
Estate. They're not eliminating it.
No.
No,
Well,
they are.
they have been saying
that's the one
steadily that
thing-
they're going to do it.
Okay.
That's the one
Okay.
thing Trump wants to
All right.
do.
They
That's
wanna
why he
eliminate-
ran for president.
they want to eliminate that. He wants to eliminate.
He
that.
wants to eliminate, it,
But-
but they don't. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
but
ahead.
I was going to go back to the corporation piece, actually, which just occurred to me that if you have corporations that are given amnesty, what you said,
yes.
they bring all the money back, and then there will be tax incentives for them to bring more money back. What is preventing the companies from relocating their corporations overseas? Because the labor is cheaper, and they will be they will be able to bring money back at a cheaper rate.
I'll tell you what they are doing
Why
today.
why should they keep the corporation here?
They are buying a small company overseas, making that the parent company, becoming a foreign corporation with no change otherwise, and now they get taxed as a foreign corporation much cheaper. That's what they're doing in the current tax code. Can you imagine what it will be like in the future tax
That's
code?
what I'm asking. That's what I think is going to happen.
What?
Even in this tax code.
Of course.
It is happening, and they're trying to facilitate that possibility.
Which, by the way, Trump has railed against. I will give him that.
Yes.
He's not doing anything about it, but he's at least.
No, it's a hot button for people, so
Yeah.
therefore he says it, but he has no intention of doing
But
anything about
I
it.
don't know how you can fix that. That's what I'm asking, because even given this simplified tax code, and given the corporations are given
it's easy.
breaks,
It's easy to
it's going to
simplify.
it's going to be
It's
easier
easy
for
to
corporations to go
simplify.
overseas.
What you do is every company that does business in the United States has their corporation headquarters in the United States.
Which, by the way, already
Well,
exists. At least a subsidiary in the United States.
I said corporation headquarters.
Well, okay.
This is the place where the taxes are. Now, there are other companies that have their corporation headquarters, like the German automobile companies. That's fine; they can sell their cars, but there's a 5% sales tax. That not put on the car, but on the company. We look at the sales, and that's what that's the tax that's the company pays.
By the way,
Even though it's a German company, they have to pay that tax
So
for
that means-
doing business in the United States.
So that means German cars suddenly will become much more expensive.
yes.
Yes.
So that's
And
a
you
good
can't
thing.
sell German cars in the United States because they're too expensive.
Right.
Which,
No.
by the way, what happens when General Motors,
Yep.
the American company, tries to sell Buicks in Germany?
They get double
Same
taxed.
thing happens.
Okay. And so therefore the whole thrust of world economics for the past 500-600 years, well, actually more than that, Marco Polo, go back as far as you want to go, of you do something well, I'll buy from you and I'll sell you something I do well, goes away. And we no longer need to have friends because they don't do you any good anyway. So we'll fight with everybody.
Isn't this?
We could do the same thing, Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Hey,
Well, right now, New Hampshire sells liquor cheaper. So
Yeah.
they should have a big gate. Nobody from Massachusetts goes there.
by the
Well,
way,
they do
supposedly
sell
you're
it
paying
cheaper, but
taxes.
you can find some other places around here
Oh, is that?
that pretty much match. There's
Yeah.
a place in Everett that
Oh, see?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to buy a car in New Hampshire, you have to pay
Mass
mass tax.
Mass tax.
So, in a sense, we already do that.
And if you live in Mass and work in New Hampshire, you're paying Mass.
You have to pay mass, yes.
Yep.
But at the same time, you going back to your argument, doesn't GM actually, doesn't General Motors make cars in China?
Yes.
Yes,
So where do they sell those?
mostly in China, but elsewhere as well.
Okay, so are they taxed from United States or no?
There's a
Should they-
corporate income that supposedly they're supposed to pay. By the way, a large portion of American cars, certainly General Motors and Ford, are made in Canada, or at
And
least
Mexico.
and Mexico. But Canada is a vast majority
There is a big,
because Winnipeg and Detroit
yes.
are
Yeah.
one city.
And the other thing is that with Mexico, parts go back and forth.
Yeah.
In the different stages of assembly, a part maybe get bigger and bigger and bigger as it's going back and forth.
So how will you simplify that piece of the taxation?
Actually, it's a real easy way. It's the value-added tax,
Okay.
which makes accountants very, very happy because now they get to play what the value of this thing is when I move it from here to there.
So that's what one of the arguments of Trump is. He's going to eliminate all these accounting firms.
Yeah.
Get them out of business. That is one of his promises.
That's probably a good thing. But factually, all the things he's talking about, with the exception of making taxation for the rich much simpler, at most are going to be a wash, if you think about it. I had prepared, because if you're going to criticize something, you should have an alternative. I'm an old college debater, and when you say something's wrong, you can't just walk away. You have to figure out how you're going to fix it. So I came up with a couple of things that I think would be worthwhile.
New tax rule.
Yeah, a change in the corporate tax code, because we're running out of time. Number one, there's no good reason why the corporate tax code should not be progressive. We're talking about simplifying things for small corporations. The advantages will all be to the mega corporations. But let's say, fine, mega corporations don't pay the 35% tax that they're nominally supposed to pay, but small corporations do.
Well, that's,
So let's put a threshold in, saying with multiple brackets. So a small corporation that some guy puts his business under so he doesn't lose his house if something goes wrong should not necessarily have to pay 35% of the corporate income. Put him down at 20. According to the Republican orthodoxy, he's the guy who's creating all the jobs anyway.
But that's what actually Trump's plan has no solution for that particular segment of the job creating market. Their taxation is going to go up actually. Their
Well, yeah.
brackets.
Well, that's
So
why
that's a good solution actually.
I think that's a way to do that.
But does Trump know this?
No, he hasn't talked to him
But-
yet.
Okay.
He'll
But
talk
if
to him
you
later.
do
But I
that,
did tell him
Bob,
to tune into the show.
Okay.
if you do that, you make it so much more difficult for the tax code and for the
Oh, okay. Well,
for the form.
it was a
can't-
thought.
You can't send it in on a postcard.
Okay. The corporate amnesty I already said. Investment deduction. One of the key things that corporations use to reduce their taxes is they invest money. There are several ways of investing money. The two primary ways are, one, you buy something that already exists, and two, you build something. If you build something, that creates jobs. You're maybe even modernizing what you have, you're increasing your capacity, but you have somebody out there with a pick and shovel and a hammer and a wrench, and they're making something work. If you buy something that already exists, you reduce jobs. You're buying the competition, which means you don't have to compete. Capitalism doesn't like competition. It's evil. Adam Smith never said anything about it. And two, you eliminate jobs because there's duplication. If I have a small corporation making widgets and you have a corporation making widgets, I don't need a CEO. I don't need a head of accounting. I probably don't need the whole accounting department. So I eliminate jobs. Then, if that be the case, then you need to differentiate when you say investment. Is it job producing investment, at which point you get a full deduction? Or is it in other kinds of investment, at which point you get a percentage of a full deduction?
So what you're saying is companies like Bain's would be at a disadvantage. What was wrong?
Bain Capital?
Bain
Oh,
Capital. Bain Capital. But those were not
Yeah.
people creating jobs.
Right.
They were eliminating jobs.
Right.
But they were investing.
Right.
They're investing. That's
Yeah.
different.
Well, investment, right
That's
now, there's only one definition of investment. There should be multiple definitions. If you believe that playing with the tax code to improve employment, to improve people's lives, then prove it by making a proposal that actually does exactly that.
But at the same time, what is your proposal for a investment where you automate everything?
Automate everything.
What
And-
happens then?
And
To
actually,
me,
there's
that
a-
would be
there
in the primary class, and unfortunately, because it is ultimately job reduction, but at least short term, it's
but
job.
it's job
increase.
reduction and it's tax savings, because
Yes, it is.
and there was a congressman or a senator in San Francisco who wants to create a robot tax.
Oh.
So
Okay.
basically, what was happening, you have companies who were replacing people with automation, but they were still producing the same product, if not more. So they were making more money, but they were getting less tax because there weren't many people. So he was proposing that if you had 4 people and you had 3 robots, he's going to tax the robots also,
Okay.
the same as the people, to generate more income. So think about that from an automation standpoint, like from a General Motors or from a Tesla or anybody who's on an automated assembly line,
Yes.
right? They're saving money on taxes because they don't have the people, but they have the machines doing this job as the people.
Right.
So they would tax that and include that in their
Actually, what you should
income.
do is you should tax it at the rate of Social Security tax, the employer's version.
But it should be just the same straight full tax, whatever.
How many robots you have, that much, that many units of people, essentially.
Yeah, or if they're saying the robot can do the job of 4 people, he gets taxed 4
Well,
times.
they are working 24/7,
And
actually.
right, and they're following the sun working, right, correct. So they would get taxed that much
Wow,
more.
that's a lot of revenue.
But that,
It's
and
actually a good idea. I thought it was a great idea.
Yeah.
except for one minor detail, your costs go up, and your
costs go up?
the corporation's costs go up, and the
Well, no, the
competition
costs don't go up.
who is in Canada or in China or in India doesn't have the same thing, and they
But the cost is
kick your ass.
cost isn't going up because you were paying a tax here, you reduce staff, so you're back down here. All they're going is back to where you were. You're not going above where you were. You're going back to where you were.
But the whole point of going down in terms of costs is to increase productivity. So in theory, you
Well,
can sell the product for less.
not- well,
in theory.
in theory, sell the product for the same, make more income because you're not paying as much in tax and to salary to people who were there or are not there.
Well, but
and that was his argument.
but
that
if you take all these savings, then nobody
no,
will
it's
do
not,
it.
again, it's not all
But if
the
you take a
savings, yeah.
small percentage of it, yeah, I buy that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you have to import stuff from overseas, you will still tax them heavily, so that they do not get this dump this stuff here.
Well,
Just
that
like
too, and the same argument is happening, or the same thing is happening now in China, where China's starting to see a growth in automation.
Yeah, that's what
And
they're
they're
doing.
starting to lose the manual labor, and they're starting to go through that. I don't call it. It's not growth; it's the opposite. Where
Structural unemployment.
structural unemployment because of that.
And by the way, there are riots in the streets.
They are right.
Because
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because their whole system is based on the fact full employment.
full employment. Yep.
Yeah, when you have 300 million people rioting in the street,
That's
you're in
easy
trouble.
But they have an easy solution for that. That's why
Just
you
shoot
don't-
them all. Is that the easy
that's
solution?
That's why you don't want to be in China.
You
you
just
know,
disappear.
We're talking about, was it 1.7 trillion or whatever over 10 years? What another way of doing it?
It's
you
more
know,
than that.
7.3 trillion.
7.3, yeah.
7.3 actually over 10 years.
That's the reduction in income.
7
Right.
trillion
Seven
Seven
trillion
trillion.
reduction.
over
is-
the next decade.
7 trillion.
7 trillion.
I,
It
oh,
would add 7 trillion to the
To the
debt over
deficit.
the next decade. And that will slow growth in the long run. That's what the prediction is.
but one thing you could do is instead of cutting taxes, have the federal government give a 0 interest loan for 10 years for building new buildings, building new buildings that are going to employ people.
Since 2008, we've basically been giving zero interest loans to everybody.
Yes.
And it's
Not
been
everybody.
working slowly, but,
But
nowhere near what Trump seems to think that growth will be if all of his stuff goes into effect.
there's no growth in anything that Trump says. There's no growth.
Yes, there is.
Absolutely not. Because
Trump Tower will get that much taller.
there is no growth because the money that's being distributed doesn't go to the people who spend it. It's going to the
yeah.
people who don't spend it.
Right.
The way, the best thing to do for a growing economy is to give money to the people who have almost nothing because they spend everything.
Yeah.
But the argument is that if you gave tax breaks to the upper income brackets, they will have more money left over to invest
In what?
In what?
Well, maybe in a bigger
In
boat.
what?
Maybe in a bigger boat.
How
So that
about
the-
in a bigger president?
Well, that's only after 3 years.
No, I mean,
Or
if-
bigger president, right?
Yeah.
That's true.
if the economy expands by people who are spending money to buy goods and services, then the best thing to do is to give money to them, and that will grow the economy much faster.
But you
Just see what happened in China when they had all this employment. Their growth, their economy was growing at 8 and 10%.
They
now.
transitioned from an export economy. Everything they built was shipped out to the major portion of the economy is now becoming domestic. So it's really self-sustaining because people are actually spending the money they're earning, and they don't need to export the way they used to.
Because they created the domestic market.
Yeah.
Right.
And they have the technology to do all that stuff now. But again, going back to your point, in fact, there are two different markets. One is the luxury market, the other one is the us common folk market.
Right.
Us common folk is, as you said, 60%. And that is a major item in the economy. But how do you provide the appropriate stimulus to the 60% of the population in comparison? Because we, as a group, large group, are
Well-
not the owners of the corporations.
No, we're
We're just the consumers.
we're giving money not only to the 60% who spend most everything they earn,
Yeah.
but we're also giving it to the bottom 30% who spend absolutely everything they have, because they don't have anything, and that helps them. So we're giving money to 90% of the population instead of 10% of the population.
But the argument with which this tax code reform is going ahead is that the people who are in the 10% bracket are the people who really create jobs. That's the argument.
Except that they themselves say, no, it's the small business. We have to help the small business. And the fact that most of the money will go to the big business is immaterial.
But that's what I was going to raise that point. I raised that point earlier too, and you did now. Again, that portion where the mom and pop business, why are they not being helped? That's what I don't understand. That's not.
But
that's
how
not
do we
the-
know they're not being helped?
No, because that's one of the things it talks
But we don't
about.
know. Again, we don't
It
know that
talks
yet.
about- actually,
I know it
this-
talks a little bit about
The
it
start article
because I
talks
read
about that.
one of the other articles like that.
But I don't know the details.
Right. We don't know
But
the details.
I want to make sure that they get a tax bracket, or they
Well-
break, or some relief.
Look at the farm industry. The farm industry, we passed a bunch of things to help the small family farmer, who doesn't really exist anymore. But what we forced some of the mega corporations to do is set up tiny little subsidiaries, so that at least they would get some of these benefits. That increased employment.
Well, not really.
Well, a little bit. There had to be somebody there.
Yeah, that'd be.
Mostly machines.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, look.
Well, there's a lot of labor involved there too, because when they were going around kicking people out of the country, the first place they were going to the smaller farms and kicking them out.
Well,
So there was still a lot of
it's only
on-ground
only
labor.
Only seasonal.
seasonal, but still.
But most of the work is done by the large machines. actually.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Well, to keep up with it, yeah.
the robot tax you were talking about begins to make some sense, because jobs are just disappearing. They're not going to China, as you pointed out. China is automating, trying to keep up with everybody else. India is automating, and those jobs, even if they came back here,
They are not going to be there.
the coal miners, the perfect typical thing, this deep coal miner in West Virginia, his job's gone. They don't dig deep into the ground. They take a steam shovel and they keep digging until they get to the coal, and then they pull it out.
Or blow up the mountain.
Well, yeah, but it's a combination of the two. Those jobs are gone. They're never coming back. And you can promise all you want to. The job classification that is disappearing faster than anything else today is retail clerk.
Yeah.
Amazon doesn't need any retail clerks. and it sells more than anybody else.
But why are they then saying there will be 50,000 jobs?
75, 85,
No,
14.
no, because of the fulfillment centers they're going to put there. So in other words, it's instead of going to a brick and mortar store, right? What they're trying to do is take their other headquarters from Seattle, move it to the East Coast, and put another major distribution center out in the East Coast. So
That will have 50,000.
that'll have over
That's
10
what they're
years. So
saying.
that when they first get here, it'll be 4,000 or 5,000, and over 10 years, it'll grow to be that magnitude.
Actually, that's a
And then-
load of BS as well, because they're going to automate that warehouse.
No, it's not a load of BS.
Yeah, it is.
isn't.
I've been involved in
that's the
factory
that's the
automation for
proposal.
30 years.
That's the proposal of what they're putting on paper. So it's
Right.
not. It may change over 10 years, but the proposal that's on paper now is the growth of jobs over the 10 years and what they say they're going to do
Right.
because of the way they have to fulfill, and also delivery. So they're going to take all of their own
Delivery
stuff.
pieces.
So delivery pieces,
You heard of
fulfillment.
drone delivery?
Yeah,
That's not gonna
that's
work.
Yeah, drone.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's gonna
They'll
work.
get it passed.
And they also, believe it or not, they're going to bring back brick and mortar. So they do want, they bought out Whole Foods. That was one thing,
Yes.
that was one acquisition they brought out. They do want brick and mortar, but at a major, kind of like a BJ's mega, like not just stores every other block, mega stores. So
The whole idea of warehousing, fulfillment centers, that's been in the process of being automated
No, I
since
know, and-
I
and-
was early on in my computer career. I helped automate a cereal factory in Ontario, Canada in the 1990s, 1980s. And they went from 400 some odd employees down to around 40.
So you
Most
were
of which were,
responsible for that.
He's-
it was
one
all
of the
my fault.
responsible
I apologize. Most of those people were truck drivers. The stuff came in, and the machines moved stuff around, and when it was done cooking, they put it in boxes by machine, and then they sent it back out, and the truck drivers drove off. We're automating cars now, so that won't last very long.
So what do you think about the idea what Amazon is pushing, that they will have an Amazon key? The guy comes in with the groceries, he or she has the key to your house. They will
It's a whole new
place
product.
The whole stuff, they are going to place it in your house or place it in your refrigerator. And you are, but it's camera visual.
well, it's all related to their product.
Yes,
So you have to
yes.
have the product in the house.
Yes.
You have to have the product on the door, and that person has to be authorized to get in your house, make sure it's on camera,
Yeah.
and it's all authorized all the way through.
So
So it's a great idea, because you have to buy the product in order for it to happen.
Yeah.
So you have to spend a couple of $100s to get the product in
Upfront,
your house,
upfront, yeah.
and use them to deliver everything, which is going to cost money.
And it's all
So-
going to be online, and nobody ever
it's not.
hacks online
No,
stuff.
it's not online.
Of course it is.
No.
Somebody's
Some-
gonna
they're
walk
going to the
into
house.
Somebody's going to hack the thing, walk into your house, deliver whatever they feel like delivering, and it may be a dump, and walk out with whatever they feel like taking.
Oh, you can do that. You can do that without having a hacker. The guy who's delivering it could be could
Well,
all of a
yeah,
sudden have
but
a
I
bad
mean-
week and take everything from everybody's house.
Yeah. So, but that's the plan. The alternative is the drone coming in, and
The
there would
smart
be
drone.
smart drone.
Smart
right.
drone.
There'd be a